Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining this session at the Lagos Leather Fair Digital Edition. My name is Olayinka David West. I'm a professor of information systems at the Lagos Business School, and I'll be your moderator for this afternoon. My job is really just to have a conversation with the great panelists and discussants that we have here. And today we're going to be talking about the issue of the pandemic. And I think when we started this conversation, we only had a pandemic that we were dealing with, but soon after that, we had the NSARS crisis as well. So we're sort of going to broaden the conversation and really look at crisis from two different perspectives, that of a pandemic, which is a health-related issue, and also the political issues relating to the NSARS crisis that we saw. And today I have three wonderful speakers who are going to share their experiences and about how we can create opportunities in a crisis in general. So with me today, I have Mrs. Adenike Ogunlesi. She's the Chief Responsibility Officer at Rough and Tumble. Then I also have Mrs. Tokumbo. Nika, you want to say hello? Or we'll come back and say hello later on. Then I also have Mrs. Tokumbo George Taylor. She's the CEO and MD of, now Tokumbo, I need to learn how to pronounce her company name again properly. So
Hill and Knowlton Strategies, but you can just say H and K.
You see, Hill and Knowlton Strategies. So we have many nice names on the show today. And then the gentleman amongst us, who we will also give some credit to, is Mr. Paul Okwegwo, right? The founding partner and CEO of Chocolate City Group. And so thank you all very much, ladies and gentlemen. We have an audience, we have some attendees with us, and I just want to say, let's have a conversation, let's make it real, let's keep it open. And I'm going to jump right in and start. And I want, as I start the conversation, I want you to sort of introduce yourselves as well as speak to the topic in terms of what were your experiences during the pandemic and the crisis, and also your actions and inactions. And I know that when I put that in my briefing notes, some of you were like, oh, why is she asking about inactions? But inactions also tell us what we could have done differently, and we'll come back to talking about that later on. So I'll start with you, Mrs. Ogunlesi. Please go ahead. Your experiences during the pandemic, actions and inactions, and also introduce yourself and Rough and Tumble.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here, and well done to Femi and her team for putting this together. The pandemic. Every time I think of the pandemic, I have to take a deep breath. But before the pandemic, as a business, we already had a challenge with the devaluation of 2017, which sent us negative and zero growth and overheads that were rising faster than our income could cope with. So it meant that we needed to go back into the business to reassess our business model and to see where else in the business was there value that we were not either paying attention to or that we needed to pay attention to. And we realized two very specific areas, very clear and very specific areas, is that we had a manufacturing company called Gatimo Apparel Manufacturing, which was not known, really not heard of, because it had a mono customer, and that mono customer was Rough and Tumble. Because Rough and Tumble had 17 retail outlets, it kept that Gatimo Apparel very busy. So the outcome of the 2017 strategy sessions that we had was to draw out Gatimo Apparel Manufacturing as a standalone business unit on its own. And so it led to what are the skills that we have, what are the skills that we need, and how do we build capacity? So it saw me in Sri Lanka trying to get skills to be able to make the switch, upgrade to go from just manufacturing for children to manufacturing for other designers, as well as contract manufacturing for uniforms. So we were able to do that. So we got in experts from Sri Lanka. They were with us for 6 months before the pandemic hit. And in that 6 months, they turned our entire operations around and left us with some amazing skills. Now, the other thing that we saw as a huge opportunity was e-commerce. And everybody asks me, who is the competition? The competition is everybody that is asking you to spend money. But then again, because of global trade, because of the borderless nature of e-commerce, it meant that people could shop anywhere in the world. So the competition was no longer local. The competition was now international. So the best way to deal with that is simply to start by saying, okay, what is our value proposition in e-commerce? We make children happy. Okay, so how do we deliver happiness to people's homes, right to their doorstep, for them as well as their children? And so we began to engineer our e-commerce. Some of it was disastrous. We brought in people, they couldn't do it. But in the end, I discovered that a website and an e-commerce platform are trillion miles apart. They're not a mile apart, they're trillions of miles apart. It's totally different. And as we evolved with the e-commerce, I also see that a combination of a brick and mortar business, which is omnichannel, requires that we upgrade our technology. And so we've been doing that as well, upgrading our technology. Now, when I stood in front of everybody and said that we could make 1 million masks, I'd never made 1 million masks before. But I think it speaks to the entrepreneurial spirit, the entrepreneurial mindset, that agility, and that can-do spirit, and that spirit that is willing to try, regardless of what the circumstances are or are not. So I find that I have found that really for us, the biggest challenge was overcome because we had gone through a previous challenge that had almost prepared us and had set the tone in the organization to become flexible, to become agile. So we were broken into teams, into little tribes where the thinking is about systems, the thinking is about outcomes. And we needed to build the culture that would drive systems thinking, outcomes thinking, results thinking. And that meant it was almost like building a whole new business, a whole new way of thinking. And you know, one of the biggest challenges in any business as you scale is how do you keep changing the thinking to embrace the uncertainties, to embrace the challenges that come with growth and with, you know, the size of a company. Your systems will crack, your everything cracks. So you have to keep ensuring that you've got a great team. You yourself, the leadership also has to be committed. You cannot do this without leadership's commitment. And leadership has to be collaborative. Leadership has to be willing, honestly, has to be willing to, we call it the 4 C's at Rough and Tumble. And it's communication, it's collaboration, it's cooperation, and it's coordination. Because you find that as you scale, people begin to operate in silos rather than cooperating. So we learned that the hard way. You know, I suddenly woke up and realized that. So those are some of the things that we then needed to focus on. Where I was busy focusing on the operations and getting things done and getting things out. But I must say that making that switch and pivoting as fast as we were able to do was really also because I have an amazing team, and they're committed, and they understand the business, and they understood that this was about survival. You know, we can thrive later, but right now, how do we even hold it all together? How do we hold everybody together so the business doesn't break into fractions where people are thinking, I don't know if my time is up for talking, I'm just ranting on. I can't hear you, Yinka.
Go ahead. I will stop you when I'm ready. Don't worry. Just
okay.
Give us your story, then I'll come. We have time. Don't worry.
Oh, okay. I apologize. I wasn't sure. So there's different areas. There is the operations, there's the finance, there's the people. And if you can't get those things to align in such a way that they're able to give you the outcomes that you want, then it's going to be a big challenge doing anything. Never mind when trouble then comes, you know. So I also think very strongly that one's spirituality cannot be divorced from the way one behaves, from the way, from what drives one's beliefs and belief systems, because your beliefs will drive your thinking, which will drive your speech and will drive your actions and the choices that you make. And your entire life really is a sum total of the choices that you have made or not made at some point in time. Because people think, I made a choice, yeah, but I didn't make a choice. No, yes, you made a choice not to make a choice. It's also a decision, you see. So I find that it's about finding that balance and that congruence so that you align everything in such a way that you can actually achieve the goals that you set out to achieve. I think I'm going to stop.
Going to stop there. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. So thank you so much, Nick. And I think that you've hit on it because when I come to Paul and to Kumbo, they're more in the service and creative sides. But when you talk about manufacturing, it's not just about having the equipment, but it's the capacity and the skill to be able to produce things, which you also saw, which you also did. And I think that, again, you've been doing this, but in a manner that was sort of in a closed environment. So you now had to sort of open and unleash. And in that unleashing, you learned new lessons and you made new mistakes and things like that. And I think that's the whole idea, where you're not afraid to try different things, but you also have to realize that there's a test and learn phase and a period in which you're going through these things. Like you said, with the e-commerce, you've gone through different iterations and you realize that a website is not e-commerce. And those are things that you can't read in a book. You just have to go through them and experience them. Great, thank you very much. I'll come back to you with some more follow-on questions. So Paul, let's hear from you from your perspective. So you're in that whole creativity, media and entertainment, and we've seen that there's also been a glut in that sector. So tell us, what were your experiences, your actions and your inactions?
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you for allowing me to be part of this panel of powerful women. I'm proud to be the only guy here.
You're blessed among women.
Yes, yes. Yes, so I mean, Chocolate City, it's a media entertainment group. We own a music label, and we also do media services for activations for brands, and also an F&B business that we own. We own a couple of restaurants and event centers. And from the description, you can hear that most of our businesses have to do a lot with convergence, people coming together. And so the impact of COVID-19 was sort of more direct and sort of more impactful than, for example, people who are already in SaaS, people who sell services, online are quite different. I think they're lucky because they already have a set system of driving sales with off-premise, without any sort of on-premise requirements. For us, I would say the inaction part of this, I would say, was sort of learning now that, we should have done a little better with our scenario planning. Of course, no one could be expected to sort of plan for something like COVID or sort of plan for something like NSARS, but we should have, because now you begin to see that, testing different scenarios, especially with our industry in Nigeria, where previously, before this time, most of the revenue in our industry for music, that is, was from live music. And we always knew that would come back to bite us at some point. And COVID-19 now made it even more clear that, for our music industry, depending a lot on live music, perhaps not the best way to go about it. And perhaps we should take things like developing locally owned VODs and distribution systems sort of more seriously. If we had, we would have done better, especially because, like Mrs. Gunlisi said, the value of the Naira, even impacts the revenue that comes from downloads from things like Spotify and Apple. And so all those dollars are not as worth, they're not as, the revenue is not so great sort of anymore. So for me, the inaction would really be, we should have taken better actions before to insulate ourselves from a business like this. I mean, I've learned a lot. Also, I do have a dual role. I'm also a sales guy and have done sales for a long time with companies like Microsoft and Nokia and things like that. And during the pandemic, I started doing sales training, which is something that I always wanted to do, but never had the time. And because I was at home, someone said, "Hey, Paul, why don't you just start training again?" Right? And I found myself training lots of sales guys during the period. I must have trained almost 200 guys from different sort of sales companies on sort of how to sell during a crisis and things like that. And I say this because I've learned that innovation is also sort of a big part of it, because without the pandemic, I probably not have had the time to do that. So training is very key. I think that as we go through this period, I think it will last for a while. We should take the time, the space that we have to learn more. And again, like Mrs. Ogunlesi has said, that improvement of oneself, improvement of the systems within your business, really looking into your systems and looking for the redundancies in the system. We found there are things that we could happily do without, that we were carrying, previously. And I know now a few of those things won't ever come back again. We had a lot of things that were sort of double counted, a lot of things that we could have done without, that we are now learning. There's something called the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule. That became my sort of, I understood that 80% of the effects come from 20% of the actions, which made me understand that perhaps we are also doing too much, and really begin to focus on that 20% that really gives us the core of our business, because we were forced to, right? So it wasn't like it was by choice. So you have to, as a salesperson or business person, begin to look at who are my key customers and cut that long tail off. So cut off that long tail and say, what am I here for? Another thing that I would say that I really learned is how to properly measure the impact of the COVID or the end-SARS movement, because there's this negativity that creeps in. Because of COVID, people said, oh, everything is done, everything is dead. But was it really the case? If you look at your business and you really measure the impact, it may not be that bad. I mean, for example, even though all the shops were closed, pharmacies were able to open to a certain degree. Restaurants were able to do deliveries to sort of some degree and things like that. So as opposed to just being negative and losing hope and saying, it's all shut down, measure be specific about the impact on your business. Look through your business and say, what parts can I keep open? What parts can I close? And what parts are most important for the development of this company? I think that's it for now. I hope that, yeah.
Great, thank you, Paul. And I like what you said, because it sort of feeds into from what Nick has said as well. When you say look within, right? Nick has said look within. We looked at ourselves and we realized that we have this capacity, but it was highly unused. But you're also saying look within to understand what makes your business tick, because you might be spending a lot of effort and you're not really getting the value return back. So when you look within and understand, so this is also about what insights do we draw from our business and how do we understand the dynamics of our business? So we might be doing a lot. And this is what you said about the 80% effects and 20% of actions. So what are those core competencies that we need to do and do well, rather than expending a lot more energy and resources and getting very little value in return? Great. Thank you so much for that, Paul. And I'll come back to you with some more questions. Tokunbo, so let's hear from you in terms of that creative and media and public relations area, because again, you're also the spin doctor, right? Telling us how to say these things and how to, and so when you think about what Paul said, how do we ensure that, we're actually telling the right stories and communicating the right message, so we keep that brand and that message alive? Go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be on this program. So first of all, Hill & Knowlton is a global PR consultancy, and we have a very strong presence in Africa. So we work with about 20 local and global clients across all sectors. So finance, FMCG, technology, oil and gas, entertainment, not fashion yet, but Mrs. Ogunlesi, I'll be speaking to you after this show.
Looking forward to that.
So what is our job? Our role as H&K is to build, manage, and maintain reputation. So can you imagine this pandemic coming to 20 of our clients, and they're looking at us to continue to manage and maintain their reputation? So we had to quickly reassess ourselves. First of all, lockdown, movement restrictions, everything was indoors, everything was online. We had to quickly advise our clients on ways to communicate. Now, we have to also let them know that reputation management during COVID was not a nice to have. Was not just a nice to have, it was a must have, you know, because fortunately, publics were really expecting communication from the brand. And communication is also very important for business continuity. So we had to even talk to brands who were very traditional media focused, that look, you have to embrace digital very quickly, because people were sitting at home. Life was now through a screen, and it definitely changed consumer and online behavior. Zoom was 10,000 per day in December. Zoom is now over 300 per day. People were consuming news online. Even the production of newspapers dropped during the pandemic. So we had to quickly tell our clients, look, you have to have virtual conferences if you must announce anything. So they had to embrace that. The other thing is we had to tell brands that, look, less about your products, but more about your consumers. So brands had to adjust their communication to show empathy and to educate the public on COVID-19. And we had to let them know that, look, don't get anxious. You need to communicate clearly, calmly, and regularly. And focus on products and services that will help the pandemic. It was not a new time to come up with something that had nothing to do with pandemic. You had to be very deliberate on your product and services. But we also said to them that, look, as much as external communication is important, internal communication was vital, because those are the movers and shakers of the company. If you don't get it right internally, there's no way we can communicate well externally. And we also had to let them know that communicate the change in customer experience. One of my clients is Eat and Go. They are the owners of Domino's, Eat and Go, and Cold Stone. So they had to quickly communicate the change of experience in, you know, how they were going to drop the products to your house without any contact. We also had to use the brand to educate people, you know, because we know the customer is king. So we need to ensure that that customer experience is promptly communicated. Because if we don't communicate to our customers, they will lack trust. We need to reassure them that we care, regardless of what was going on. But this pandemic, we care about you. And we care about you building trust in us. So when we say use your brand to educate, again, one of my clients was Visa. And what they did immediately was they realized that, look, transactions are going to be taking place online. So they quickly started a spot a scam campaign to educate people on how to save secure online, you know, and they gave reliable information as well about the virus. And another thing we told some of our clients was partner with governments. That this is now to show your CSR aspect and other relief agencies, you know. And again, what Visa also did was they promoted SME businesses that had online platforms. And, you know, so that people could know that, look, if you cannot go out, there are SMEs that can actually provide these things and bring it to your house. But we also understood that during the pandemic, people had to be careful because the pandemic affected communications both negatively and positively. Negatively, because obviously, we know with comms, that's the last budget that they fight for everything else. But comms budget, when it's being cut, Paul, I'm sure you can understand. They cut the comms budget, but they still want the publicity. They still want the visibility. So how do you continue? But we also found out something very negative. Internal information, internal memos were now being leaked externally during the pandemic. So employers, you know, had to talk to their employers, you know, in terms of, how are we going to start communicating? And I know that a lot of my clients got a bit worried that, you know, we can't send any memos out anymore because they feel it's going to go on Twitter, it's going to go on Instagram, you know, so how do we, you know, sort that out? And then when the NSAS campaign started, you know, it started, then it crept up on us all of a sudden. And I just said to my team, I said, look, Any client right now that wants, because I had a lot of clients that had launches, events, I'm like, they should stop anything that they're doing. And they had to consult with us if they wanted to be part of the voice for NSAS, because we did see a lot of brands that joined the conversation. They had a very negative backlash, you know, either because they didn't use the same hashtag, or people were just waiting behind the scenes to say that, I'm not happy with this brand. So since this brand is talking, boom, I'm going to make sure that they feel this pain. But all in all, as a publicist, as a PR professional, during a crisis is not a time for brands to withdraw. Mm-hmm. It is the time to be very active and meaningfully support all their stakeholders. Mm-hmm. Let me now talk to you about inactions, because that was part of your second thing, but I'll tell you my inaction. This pandemic started in China. I prepare my team, I prepare my clients for crisis management. But we all waited till the pandemic hit us in Nigeria. Why did I not start planning the scenarios like Paul was saying? But you know what? We always feel we're untouchable anyway in Nigeria. But why did I not start talking to my clients? Because most of my clients are also international. So they have offices in other places. So when they were closing offices in parts of Asia, why did we not start scenario planning? One of my clients is also La Liga. Football was going to end. I'm losing revenue from that. Why did I not plan that scenario? But we took it for granted. We just thought, oh, you know what? It's going to blow over. So that's it for me.
Well done.
Thank you, Tokunbo. And I think that you've all three of you have highlighted the importance of business and management practices throughout the lifeline of your organizations. But Tokunbo, I want to stay with you here and pick on something that you mentioned, and which is the fragility of businesses in and of themselves in terms of that internal trust. Because when you talk about memos leaking and that whole internal trust, and I'll come back because Mr. Gunesi said, oh, the 4 C's in rough and tumble, communication, right? How do you build that internal trust and ensure that the communication is open and transparent and again, to insulate and give your employees that confidence that you've got their backs? What should organizations be doing and how should they be thinking? Because yes, the customer is king, we're customer centric, but we have an internal customer that we're also responsible to. So can you speak to that? And I'll take the same question with Paul as well, because you have different audiences that we're all dealing with. And Nika also has factory workers and things like that. But that's an important part, because we can't scale as an organization if we don't have that internal team.
Nika, that's a very good question. And let me just, and it's one that I'm passionate about. And the reason I'm passionate about it is it's all about the Naira. It's all about the income. It's all about the external customers. Mm. And you know, if your house is not in shape, you cannot influence people outside. We focus so much. The only briefs PR people get is, oh, external communication, external communication, external communication. But you need internal communication. If you don't get internal communication right, your values as an organization, your culture as an organization, the way your people react with people, if you don't get that internal comms right, you can be very beautiful outside, but inside is rotten. So we need to also take a step back to look at how we must impact our people. Look, if an organization has a good moral values, it'll be very difficult for me as an employee to now say that I want to do things in a certain way, because at the end of the day, I carry the ID of that brand. So I need to live, breathe, sleep, eat that same brand. So for me, it's all about internal communication. If you do not feel that you are valued as a member of staff, if you do not feel that the company should communicate certain things to you before you hear from the third party outside. So internal, it's just like the way, no matter, so let me take it back to children. People say that, kids behave badly outside. This kid is this kid is that. But what values are the parents imbibing in those kids before they go outside? It's the same as an organization. Sorry, I'm very passionate because
no problem. No. And that's the whole idea. We're not here to be cute and cozy. Don't worry. So, Mrs. O, you spoke about this, and you spoke about how you sort of led your team, but I think also you emphasized the values, the spirituality, that whole being, and that whole self-assurance and confidence that has given you the ability to do these things. How were you able to overcome? Because again, you're not even dealing with global brands like Tokumbo and Paul and people like that. You're dealing with blue collar workers. How were you able to overcome and communicate and reach them?
So, and I must thank Tokumbo for taking us down that road, because it's one of the things that I felt that we really did well. So what happened in our business was that one of my staff, his house got burned and he lost everything. And it took a while before we got to know that that's what had happened to him. So I said, if we are saying that we are the rough and tumble family, how does something then happen to a member of staff and we don't know? So I said, look, for me, the easier, and this was just before the pandemic, I said, the easiest thing for us to do is get everybody that is in this organization, in retail, in the manufacturing, get everybody onto a WhatsApp platform. On that WhatsApp platform, you will be able to communicate with everybody. We went further to break people down into areas in which they live and assigned a local coordinator who was responsible for checking up on people if we didn't see them. And this just worked amazingly through the pandemic. And one of the things I think we did very well during the pandemic was when I realized that we were going to be stuck at home and the possibility of the markets not being opened, I said to HR, go out, buy something like 30 bags of rice, 30 bags of gari, 30 bags of beans, oil, salt, whatever. Just break it down, give it to the area coordinators. Those who are out of Lagos, give them the funds, the regional managers, the funds to go and do all of that shopping and make sure that everybody gets a package from the organization. Because we cannot say we care about people. And at a time like this, when nobody is sure rather of what is likely to happen, and you then don't, you then don't know, are people eating, are they not eating, and so we were able to do that. And so there was always somebody communicating with all the members of staff. Then we got everybody onto a Zoom meeting. How are you? What's going on in your area? How are you doing? Just that communicating with people made people feel like they were part of something bigger than themselves. And it got everybody excited. And the fact that we shared all of this food, nobody was expecting it. I just thought it was the right thing to do based on my value system that, look, caring about people is not about what you say, it's about what you do. So how do you show people at a time like this that you care? So when the pandemic did come and I needed to make the masks, I needed to make samples because there were state governments that were calling me to bring samples. When I called on my staff, some of them walked to our facility. 2 hours it took them to get because there was no public transport. 2 hours to come and make samples, to come and begin to rearrange the entire factory. By the time the first set of orders were coming in, I recognized that we needed to get a caterer. So we were cooking for over 200 people on a daily basis. Then we needed to take care of transportation because there was no public transportation. So we got those LSDPC buses to bring people as far as from Ota, Ikorodu, to bring them in so that they could work. Now, when everybody saw that, everybody's energy went up and it was like, we can do this. We're going to survive this. And it was almost as if we had our own internal routers, for lack of a better word. I don't know what Tokumbo would call it. Tokumbo will probably use a much better word than I'm using. Apostles, let's say, apostles, who believed in what we were doing. I was there every day with them. I wasn't saying that because I was afraid of COVID. I was shit scared, if I can say that online. I was scared of the pandemic, but after all, I'm closer to 60 than anything else. So I was approaching that age, but I just thought, damn it, this thing is a game of the mind. So what is driving my thinking? And that's when I realized Nigeria builds your mental muscles, whether you like it or not. And you build mental resilience in Nigeria or you die. And you can be living, you can be alive, but you're dead before you're actually buried. And Nigeria has a way of making that happen if you don't have that tough mental, those tough mental muscles. And so I've also always believed that my skill is 20%, my psychology is 80%. Speaking to your Paul's Pareto principle, for me, I apply it also to my mental state, that my mental state is what is going to drive my other states, my capacity to deliver, my capacity to believe in myself, to believe in my team, to believe in what is possible when everything outside is seemingly looking like it's not possible. And the quiet strength that drives all of that is my spirituality. And my spirituality is deeply embedded in meditation and believing that the abundance of the earth and thereof is available to me once my thinking is right. And so where there seems to be a famine, I believe that there is always an abundance, that it is never a famine for forever. The first message I got is, and this too will pass. Then, the next message, and I'm sorry, I cannot divorce my spirituality from the rest of my life. It's an integration, an alignment between my spirituality and my human self, and how it drives the results that I want to see in my life. And so embracing the belief, a belief that says that anything and everything is possible, should I be willing to commit to it, to take the necessary actions that it requires, and not die of something that I call excusitis. I hope I'm not boring, Paul, because I just saw you yawn.
I doubt it.
No, my son just yawned in front of me, so it just sort of...
Oh, it's contagious. Yawning is contagious.
You mirrored him without thinking. I think for me, those are the things, those things are so important. That entrepreneurial spirit of belief, of passion, of energy, of wanting to make things happen regardless of what the circumstances are saying, and believing that you can co-create the experiences that you want. You just have to be willing to and willing to put your energy into that place and just go ahead and do it. And both Paul and Tokumbo, as creative people, that with creatives, you're constantly birthing. It's about a birth. So how do you go through a rebirth? How do you define, refine, and redefine and evolve? And once you have that mindset of constantly evolving and seeing things from the perspective that nothing is ever a constant, it is always moving, it's always shifting. So when things happen, you're more open-minded and more flexible and more agile in your thinking. One of my favorite sayings is that the tree that cannot bend to the wind will break. And it's so true. If we cannot bend to the wind, we do break. And so it's facing within ourselves first, facing the resistance that we have towards achieving the goals that we set for ourselves. And this is always mirrored in the organization. The leadership drives the tone, the culture of every single organization. And it can be very difficult when you're trying to convince people that something is possible, when all they've seen and all they've grown up is with the Nigeria that nothing is possible, or that nothing appears to be possible.
So Tokumbo, you have a date with Mrs. O, but now Mrs. O, I'm going to call you my gladiator. You know me and you already have our connection, but
Yes,
you're now my gladiator, because I really believe in what you're saying.
Yeah.
So Paul, in your case, Paul, you're also the internal, the production, and the external. How did you sort of manage all that communication?
Okay, I mean, I've been listening quite intently and sort of writing notes furiously. There's something that Tokumbo said that I really like. I mean, she was talking about the parents and kids, and it brought a saying to my mind. It's saying that there are no bad children, only bad parents, right? And that really applies in leadership, of a company or of a business. And you always have to think of what kind of business. So because different kinds of businesses need different kind of sort of management, different kinds of leadership. We work with young people a lot. They're from a new generation. And so perhaps the method that we had, because we were raised to be a bit more stoic, right? We were raised to be a bit more, take it on the chin and just move on. But I find with managing young people, there's a lot of sort of hand-holding that you need to do and a lot of responsibility you have to take for the tools that you give these young people to work. And those tools may be emotional, they may be mental, they may be physical, but you just have to always be given the right tools. And if you're in the creative sector or in anything that requires creativity, one of the first things that will be impacted when you can't have that line of sight is the collaborative process will suffer. And making music, it's about 2 or 3 young guys in the studio sitting together, comparing beats, talking, even in doing campaigns for all our clients. Like Tokumbo said, I mean, all our clients' marketing budget was slashed by 70%, all of them, all of them. But they were like, yo, Paul, we may not even renew for the year. And even if we renew, you have to get the same results with a smaller budget. This requires a lot of creativity. And we find it's easier to put ourselves into a room, buy some beers or whatever we take and just sit down and just work on it and have those. I'm sure, Tokumbo, you've had those late night sessions in one funny hotel somewhere trying to do a PowerPoint, trying to do a plan, get the graphics guy in. Those things can't happen anymore. So immediately you begin to lose some sort of quality in the product because of the lack of collaboration. It's a challenge, right? And we had, for example, for some of our artists, we had to set up studios in their homes for them to say, okay, fine, let's put a studio in your house. So, perhaps you can sort of work from there and then we can send files, which meant that we had to sort of begin to provide additional things like additional data for our staff. So, give them a data allocation that they didn't have before, and then of course, we have to look again at our health plans. So where we had health plans that were like silver, we increased them to silver plus because we didn't know what would happen to our staff if they were not sort of in proximity. And then we had these weekly meetings to discuss feelings. I mean, my HR, Biola, loves talking about feelings. I'm like, Biola used to give me a break, but she's like, Paul, I'm not, at least outwardly, I'm not outwardly the feelings guy because of the way I was raised. But then I realized that it was important to talk to the staff once we can talk about feelings. Those calls, we never we said no business, just how do you feel? What's going on, right? So that team culture, you have to find a way to transfer it to a non-physical sort of culture, because it's easy to drive culture when you're in the same place, right? Because they can see you, they can touch you, they can feel you, they can measure your expressions, they can know how sad you are or happy you are. But when you are remote, it's that, because you're not touching, that human element is sort of reduced. You have to do a lot more with the culture up here and the culture of the entire team, and getting the team to believe that you are still with them. During the pandemic, there was something called the Lekki Food Drive, which I joined with Banky and a few other guys. We were going out to give food to people in the area, in the Lekki area. And I went for one or two of those trips, and I really saw that, the needs of some people were really quite rudimentary. It wasn't, I was talking about, look, how do we secure the business? So some people couldn't eat, right? They couldn't eat. So, because if you know how poor Nigerians are, there are people who literally, their job is literally, they wake up in the morning, they get ready, they go to the airport and look for a bag to carry. And then they can make some money and sort of have a meal. So with that taken away, there was a lot going on that made me realize that, look, we really have to simplify to understand what people actually need. And I apply that same principle to our staff as well, that let's keep it simple. Let's not complicate the solution. Let's make sure that everybody is able to sort of do their work well. With the NSAS, it was a similar thing because we also have young creatives. So the creatives were at the center of the NSAS movement, right? It was mostly artists and young people and you know, the feminist group. And it was young people who I mean, that whole thing. And I went for the protest. I think I went there almost every day for the protest. I was in, you know, because I wore like a hoodie. So people don't say I'm too old to be there, but I was there. And I sort of hung out with the guys at the back of the stage, and I was carrying water, giving out food, and just trying to do my part because I felt it was really important time in our history. And I realized that these young kids, they've grown 20 years without military rule, right? So they don't have the same PTSD that we have, because of what we've seen. And so they allow themselves to be more connected to idealism than we do. So, because we have a tendency to think practical. How, is it going to work practically? But they are really, really open to be, ideal. And in that very moment, in that very process, there's a lot of creativity. So for the staff who work for me, I said, look, guys, take the week off, go and join the protest, but join it safely. What do you need, right? We give them extra money. Are you protected? Because we wanted really to be a part of that whole process, knowing that it will set our business back a bit. But we felt it was important to, and this is why, because it's important to also to connect to what drives these young people. If they work for you, they're around you, they produce for you, you have to connect to what sort of concerns them. And for us, that's sort of something that we sort of focused on to sort of cope. We have lost quite a bit of staff. Of course, there's a turnover rate because we couldn't perhaps pay people as much as we were doing before, and the pay cuts here and there for senior team and junior team. And like I said before, because we had seen so many redundancies, there are some jobs that won't just come back even after the whole thing is over. But the important thing is looking at the systems. And I like what Mrs. Ogunesi said about the spirituality. And this is not about being Christian or Muslim, just being a human being, right? Looking at that process of how can I be a supportive business, culturally supportive, a more socially responsible business. And I think there's a lot of value in being that, because people tend to now look upon you, and I'm sure Stokumbo's clients will tell you as well, that the more socially responsible you are, the more the consumers, the entire country, aligns with you and sort of begins to wish that you do well. There's a writer called Paulo Coelho who I like a lot, and he wrote a book called The Alchemist.
I read his books.
Yes.
I read his books.
Yeah. Yes. The Alchemist is one of the widely books.
Yeah, so in that book, there's a quote he made, and he said, basically, I'm just going to paraphrase, said, if you let's say indict a good matter in your mind, the universe will conspire. The universe will conspire to make things go your way. And I really found that very impactful. That the universe, as we know it, can be on your side if you are able to take a breath, look at what you are doing, and ask yourself those questions. Am I socially responsible? Am I, aware? And am I driving this culture within my company, within my staff, within myself, within my family? So COVID-19, it's been a tough year for all of us, COVID and the NSAS. But I find that, if there's some positives, it will be that deeper internal look into not only oneself, but also into one's business and also into one's people that will make us do better next year. Knock on wood. That's next year's a better.
Go ahead.
Please permit me. I didn't say anything about our own NSAS experience. I don't know why. Maybe somewhere at the back of my mind, I'm trying to erase it. But what happened? What happened to us was we had one of our stores burnt to ashes, and we had two looted, completely vandalized, and CCTV actually in one of the stores revealed a woman with her kids actually cutting away the merchandise in the store. And so we're 3 stores down. So what were we going to do with, one of them doesn't look like it's going to come up for another year or so, which is Circle Mall. And it was like, not again, you know, I was sort of like just coming through, believing, understanding how much the COVID-19 had actually taken out of me, because unfortunately, I'm not as young as I think I am or as I used to be. So it's
Oh, no, you're very young. You're very young.
Thank you. Thank you. Flattery will get you everything. Don't worry.
It's all in the mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But you know, when you get to an age, your body tells you and gives you signs that there's certain things you don't go at a certain pace. You reduce the pace and you go at a pace that is more comfortable for you. And I think that's where I am. So I looked at this thing and I honestly, I felt the blow. You know, the truth of the matter is I just thought, you know, how long will we go on fighting? For how long will we fight? You fight the local government, you fight the state government, you fight the FIRS, you fight the LIRS, you fight the LASMA, you fight the police, you fight customs, you fight, you fight, you fight. I didn't know I was a born fighter or destined to spend the rest of my life fighting. So at this point in time, I'm looking at it and I'm beginning to question myself that all the investments that I have in Nigeria, should I be thinking something else? But again, if we had not gone full throttle at e-commerce, trying to get the capacity and the competence to drive the e-commerce platform, even though our orders are not on the same level as the 3 stores, the point is that we are getting orders. We're getting orders from America. We've gotten orders from Europe. We're getting orders from right across Nigeria where we have no stores. The numbers are okay, but the numbers are not equivalent to 3 doors being opened and people going in every day. But then it's decision time. Do we really, what is the silver lining in this whole experience? And the question for me is, perhaps, or the thing to think about is, perhaps we don't really need those 3 stores. Perhaps instead of putting money back in those 3 stores, we should put them on e-commerce. And so again, this comes back to being able to step back, being able to breathe, being able to listen, being able to sit with a team that is committed. I keep saying this thing. You cannot go far without a team. You cannot scale a business without a team. It is totally and utterly impossible. It's people, it's money, and it's systems. Those 3 things have to align. That's the only way you're going to scale. So here we are, 3 stores down. We're coming to our busiest period, but then we're on e-com. And I've just tried to bring everybody to believe and see that e-com is the future. And so we don't have to worry about these 3 stores, because it will dissipate our energy if we start to worry about it. So how do we double up our energy in the e-commerce space and double up our energy in our already existing doors? And how do we get into the psychology of our salespeople to tell them we're 3 stores down, but guys, we still got to make those numbers. And with you, with everything you know, with everything you are capable of making those numbers. So I find there's a lot of conversations. There's a lot of communication, as Tokumbo says. And that internal communication, the person with the loudest voice will get the highest share of attention. So you better make sure that the loudest voice is coming from the organization. It is clear. So there's no need for Chinese whispers. There's no need for she said, he said, they said. It's communicated properly through their line managers as communication coming from the organization. This is where we're going. But one of the things I also do and make sure that I do is that I ask everybody, what direction should we go in? What do you think? So that there's buy-in and there's ownership. And we do something, we have a practice on Monday mornings that we huddle and we talk about the things that we are grateful for. And there is also an opportunity to open people's minds to different things that you might want to introduce to the organization or to ask their opinion, because it's about them. So what are you grateful for? How can we be grateful? Because around us, there's so much negative energy that you've got to force people to see, you not force, but you've got to be deliberate and intentional about refocusing people on energy that is positive, so that they themselves can be the best version of themselves and bring the best version of themselves to work. Otherwise, productivity is a lot of motion and no productivity, or a lot of action and motion.
No movement.
Yes, we're not moving, but everybody's moving, but we're not moving.
Okay. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go into, sorry, Paul, go ahead.
I wanted to add something that I picked up from just very quickly while Mrs. Ogulisi was talking. And I mean, like I said before, I've been doing some sales modules for some people who I train, and especially banks, and just understanding that building a sales structure, you have to look at it differently in a new world. Sales structures are no longer about understanding your wholesalers, retailers, and it cannot be traditional anymore. We have to move towards a more digital way of building sales structure. I mean, I've met quite a lot of young kids who have sales businesses that are all online. I know a young girl who I mentor who has a sales business that she doesn't have one store anywhere. And she does decent revenue for a 25-year-old. I can tell you, if I was making that money at 25, I would not be here. I'd be in Barbados, somewhere. So just interesting to note that for me also with consulting for sales companies like I do, I try to tell them that, look, we need to look at your traditional sales structure as it is today and plan for the salesmen of tomorrow. What should the salesmen of tomorrow know? How should they act? And so I do something called value selling, a value selling module, and a selling in crisis module that helps move from traditional ways of thinking in sales and now value selling with a digital twist. So that was very, 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 very good. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. And I think what I'm hearing is, while the crisis has been a crisis, right? Mrs. Ogulisi said we started the crisis in 2017. So we've been sort of trudging along with the crisis. But I think, again, what I'm hearing everyone say is that the ability to weather the storm and go through those turbulent times is critical, but you can't do it alone. You need the strength of the I, right? Which is you. What are your own beliefs and values and your whole spiritual system that give you that confidence and courage to step out into that world? You need the strength of the team and the business, which is the we, right? Because you can't do it alone. You need the different layers and the different tiers within your organization to be able to do it. And then we also need the environment in which we operate in, which is that us, to tell us that, how can we also leverage off one another? Because that's another thing we need to also say, that while we're talking about intra-organizational collaboration and communication, how do we also do it inter-organization? So we're actually not trying to replicate, because Paul was saying, we're doing a lot of things, but a lot of it is replication. How can we streamline and ensure that we can get the best value? But I think the most important is this issue about, we need to be humane. Our employees are they're not disposable tools. And so when we're thinking about building businesses, we're not calling them social enterprises, but we need to be humane in realizing that if you can do well by doing good. They're not adverse in that sense. So how do we continually build that social structure and those social systems to ensure that, because the bottom line is that you cannot just be thinking about rent seeking alone. There are people who need to be built up. And when you think about the environment in which we live in Nigeria is hard. So how do if we can say Nigeria is hard, what do our employees want to say when they're thinking about Nigeria? So we need to collaborate a bit more. And I like the opportunity that we can share ideas, because I think I've learned a lot from this conversation in terms of internal communication, building your teams, having the huddles, having the touchy-feely time. Because everybody needs some time to have that touchy-feely moment. Some people live alone. They don't have family in Lagos, right? They're going crazy. So how do we build this on and ensure that we can actually build organizations that last? And I think that's the most important thing. that in 30 years' time, there will be a rough and tumble. In 30 years' time, there will be a chocolate city. And it has the values because they're foundational to who that company is. Okay, so I'm going to take us into the Q&A now. And I'm just going to sort of pick at some questions. So Paul, I'm going to start with you. How do you, and Tony is asking, how do you think the COVID restrictions in large gatherings would affect events and the entertainment industry in December? So you see, December is the time when all the young people come home for Christmas and there's things to do. So what's the plan for that sector?
Yes, I mean, this is a very important question because I'm going through that now, thinking about how to do that now. Because I mean, we do own our own little center in VI. Before the pandemic, we were able to do small events and people were free to come and go. During the COVID, the government told us that we could open, but pseudo events where you'd have to distance people and they'd have to have space. But as you know, Nigerians are very boisterous in the way we enjoy our entertainment. So people find that experience not to be so much to their liking, but we will adapt. I think it'll be more important to look into a lot more sort of online solutions for events. That doesn't bring the same kind of revenue, but at least people can push it from a brand perspective. That can be pushed. But I still think there will be events happening. Event centers who do have outside spaces have a bit more advantage because people are going to be more comfortable being outside than being in enclosed environments. So you would look open air events and activities. But Lagos being what it is, I'm sure there'll be people breaking the restrictions up and down. I'd advise everyone to be careful because we have heard that there's going to be a resurge of the sort of COVID as well. But I've been talking to a few people and there will be some events, but those events have to be sort of planned and people sort of have to take the right precautions and sort of still try to make that revenue within those confines. And hopefully as it begins to dissipate, we will see, we'll see a return to the big capacity events that we're going to have. We've had some listening parties just to test and sort of they've gone well. Just spacing out the proximity, if you will, for people to just still be able to sort of enjoy and getting a sort of like a hybrid activity where some people can be there physically while some people can be there online, and figuring out what revenue model that you would use to make that content exclusive so that people who are online can pay something for it. Okay. And this we'll see quite a few hybrid solutions like that.
So it's not just about the distribution, it's also about the revenue side as well. And Tokumba, I'm sure you have many ideas for the communication and branding about safety in general, because we also need to be mindful of the fact that while everyone is waiting for 2020 to end, we don't have the crystal ball for 2021. So this 2020 might just be a teaser. So let's also be starting, let's continue to build that resilience because we don't know what's up ahead. Okay. So Mrs. O, I have a question for you, and this is also Tony. During the 6-month training with the people, with your team from Sri Lanka, what was the biggest lesson you learned or challenge overcome in scaling your manufacturing business to include manufacturing for other companies?
So the biggest lesson was efficiency and speed. It was also in efficiency was great savings in material use, great savings in consumption of time. So material consumption, time consumption, and the number of units that we could produce by just tweaking a couple of things and by just doing things in a certain way. So our standards were improved upon. We have 2 40-foot containers that are on the way with machines to improve again on that efficiency, because contract manufacturing for me is a big, there's a big, huge opportunity in that space. And we want to be able to own this space and take full advantage of it. So the biggest lesson for me was cost efficiencies, efficiencies in material, efficiencies in time, efficiencies in quality of production, and the introduction of I used to do quality control, but it's quality assurance, not quality control. So right along the entire process, the trouser line, the shirt line, the dress line, there are supervisors who quality control or quality assure, I don't know what you would call it, those things. So it's preparing us for ISO certifications, which should ultimately lead to us being able to produce for companies outside of Nigeria. So we're looking forward to that. So those were the big lessons for me.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And I think that it's important that while Mrs. Ogunlesi didn't say this, but capital is also a big plus in being able to do a lot of the things that you have to do. So you need that capital, you need the cash flow to be able to do even some of those other things that she also mentioned. So Tokunbo, let me ask you, this is a general question, but I'll throw it out to you. So someone is asking here that e-commerce is the future, but how does that impact employment? Won't that increase unemployment in the country and rise in criminal activities?
Wow. Okay. Rise in unemployment. I think when you enter a business, is how it's just basically going on to what Mrs. Ogunlesi said. It's efficiency. How can you become more efficient? And people should also understand that the leaner you are and the more efficient you are, there's some cost you don't transfer to customers. And so yes, maybe, but a business has to be very efficient and they have to ensure that they derive value. Now, in terms of safety, as I said, one of my clients actually started a safety campaign on how people can protect themselves online. Look, digital is the new normal. So we have to ensure that we embrace it. And I think we also need to be careful. And we also need to look at the kind of sites we're buying things from. We also need to look at the questions that are being asked. So I think more financial institutions that have safety tips, especially for their customers, will help avoid transactions or bad transactions. But digital is the way to go. We just have to ensure we protect ourselves. And I think with the digital space as well, so it's not just about employment, there are also digital resources that are going to be needed, So I think, and I know that the government is giving funds to increase capacity of technology for individuals. So there are going to be jobs created as well on the digital space to make us a bit more efficient and to become, we have the numbers to become the, what's that place in America? The technology space.
Silicon Valley.
We have enough people in Nigeria to become the Nigerian Silicon Valley. So whilst they're just been, taken away, there are also jobs that are going to be created on the technical side. So, it's a win-win situation, the way I say it, to be quite honest. And we do have a lot of, the Andelas of this world and all those other people that are in Nigeria that are creating technology capacity for the younger generation.
Okay, thanks, Tokunbo. And I think that I wanted Tokunbo to give it a stab. Go ahead, Mrs. O.
Yeah, so I think it speaks to something that has happened to us where we have about 27 staff from 3 of those stores because we operate a shift system. Now, what we realized was that we were already looking for staff because this is fashion and our e-commerce is fashion. We're going to be uploading a lot of products. We're going to be describing, so there's a lot of content going on. There's category management going on. There's online merchandising going on. These people have already been trained in our system, in our way of selling. They've already been trained in our products, understanding our products and being able to describe our products, being able to sell value, as Paul says, to today's customer. So we were able to, for those who were willing to make the transition, we were able to help them transition. So they came in to the support center and they became product uploaders and they literally transitioned into the e-commerce space, because what nobody tells you is the amount of content that you need to create for the e-commerce space. Everybody says go online as if it's a piece of cake. It is not. It is so far from it. And the content is real time. So it's not even something that you can say, oh, you can do it next week. You've got to be so agile and you've got to be moving so quickly. You've got to be putting products up, putting them down, checking what's selling, checking what's not selling, moving things around. Nobody tells you that until you get into it. And then you realize you need an army of people.
No, Mrs. O, we tell you, but you don't like to believe it. We tell you, you don't like to believe it. Okay. So,
I haven't been to Lagos Business School in a while. Maybe I need to come back for a while.
I would love to add something that is very key, I think, and people have said it before, it's about training, right? So if you look at in terms of jobs, now, vis-a-vis jobs, the gap that we're going to have is in the training of the workforce that we had previously to the new workforce that is coming up, right? So in terms of those jobs, people have to begin to train in Nigeria for the jobs of tomorrow, which will be more digital, right? But you find that there's going to be a gap because there's going to be a lot of sales guys, for example, who have only learned how to sell the traditional way, like boots on the ground, entering the market, direct, what you call DTS, right? Or DST, direct sales guys, right? And then you have guys who manage wholesale and retail and things like that. So a lot of the sales guys that we have today are people who have been trained. I used to work in FMCG. I was there for a long time. So, I understand being in the market and selling products, right? In that, boots on the ground way. And then you now have the problem that today, the people who understand how to sell online, people who do SaaS, software as a service, which was like 1961, they started doing this thing at MIT. They have trained people through Silicon Valley, through the schools, that your job is pretty much going to be sitting down in a chair, talking to customers online. We have to catch up. Nigeria has to catch up. Our programs that are happening in our universities, at LBS, everywhere, need to be redesigned to make sure that we are training for the salespeople of tomorrow who may not probably have a beat to run, a physical beat, but whose beat will be how many customers online can you sell value to, and how do you do that delivery online. So I've been involved in this myself in the last 1 or 2 years, adjusting all my sales modules, because normally I would go in with some kind of pyramid module to build a sales structure, but I'm learning that I have to now go in with a different entire structure to train people. How well do you know your phone, right? How well do you know your phone? How well do you know the tools that are available to you? How well do you understand e-commerce? And how can you be a salesman within that new environment? I think it's very
great. And I agree with you also. Maybe I didn't tell all of you that my profession is actually information systems. So this is my day-to-day, and you're preaching to the converted. So you're not talking to me in general. But generally, I agree with you that business has moved from place to space, whether we like it or not. And there was a lady who says, oh, not all businesses can go online. I totally disagree, because when you think about a business, it's about flows, right? There's information flows, and we can transfer information and transmit information digitally, right? There's financial flows. We can move money digitally, because that's what you do in e-commerce, right? You provide the information, there's a financial flow. The third flow is the physical flow, which is logistics. And then there's so many third-party logistic providers, either last mile or middle mile, that will do it for you. So ladies and gentlemen, you have to now think about your business in a different type of way. And I'll give you an example. Look at this digital fair we're attending now, right? I don't know how many of you went to the exhibition floors, right? All they had to do was provide Mrs. O like an exhibition, a digital exhibition, which is image and text and all sorts of other things in a 3D fashion. But then 2 years ago, if anyone had said, oh, we'll be doing this digitally, everybody would have said no. And I'll tell you that, see, the information age that we're entering, that we're living in now, or we've been forced to do, has been catalyzed by COVID, has actually been since the turn of the millennium. So we're late. We're really, really late. And so right now we have to sharpen our skills and realize that jobs are not going, jobs are coming. And to be honest with you, you can work for anyone in the world from Lagos. All you need is a computer and a connection. So it's about talent. So if you have the skills, you have the talent, you have the mind share, you will be employed anywhere in the world. So I don't think there's something to be afraid of. I think it's about, let's internalize, look within, Let's unlearn our bad skills or our bad habits and realize that we need to learn and continue learning and relearning. And I think that if we adopt that practice, look at what we're doing today, right? We're doing this now. I've taught 3 sessions of MBAs without seeing my students, right? If I saw them on the streets, I probably wouldn't know what they look like. And so we have to realize that we need to embrace what is ahead of us. It's come upon us without us wanting it. For people like me, I'm so thrilled because anytime, digital people are the ones that are also, they're making it like bandits in this period, because proposals that you had put on the table before, everyone sort of threw them away. But now we have everybody now, oh, bring that proposal, because you have no choice anymore. So ladies and gentlemen, I think that the onus is on you to start. And my panelists have shared with you their leadership lessons, their agilities, their mistakes, their issues regarding, continuous training, innovate. And again, I think that if you're going to take anything away from this session, take away the fact that don't start with a negative attitude. Because when you say, I can't, that's already that defeatist negative attitude. So as a final roundup, your most important leadership lesson. And then if you were to do this again, what would you do differently? As a final roundup, ladies and gentlemen, Tokunbo, I'll start with you.
Thank you. Preparation. Scenarios. You have to be ready as a leader to be adaptive to any situation that you face, bearing in mind your internal and external stakeholders. You have to be trusted. As a leader, you have to be trusted, because your action plan will determine how your team would feel. Empathy and compassion in crisis is something we always really need to look at. And I think something that you touched on and Paul touched on is we need to give our internal employees hope and comfort, because a lot of people had depression. Depression is such a, it's been there, but it's now very prominent. And so what I learned, I actually went to do a virtual communications course online when this pandemic started, to learn how to communicate with people virtually. And it really helped me, to be quite honest. So I think one thing I would leave, change will happen. Change is imminent. Change is constant. So we just have to prepare for it and make sure that we're adaptive to any situation and we carry our team along, understanding that both our internal and external stakeholders will have their own challenges. But we also need to work with information, because if we're not well informed, we won't know how to act. So preparation, analyze the impact you're going to have internally and externally, understand people's challenges, communication and be well informed, empathy and compassion, be a trusted leader, and give hope and comfort, especially to your internal people.
Great, thank you, Tokunbo. Mrs. O?
I think really Tokunbo has said it all. But what I would like to add to it is that it's about building an ecosystem where you are leading people to and helping them unleash their potential so that they find meaningful work wherever it is that they are working, and that they are connected to the business because what they are doing is meaningful and it is impacting. So you give people the opportunity to do in-house training. You give people the opportunity to speak. So you are not the only voice in the organization, And I think for me, the 4 C's that we practice of communication, of cooperation, of collaboration, and I forget what the 4th one is now.
Committed.
Coordination.
Coordination.
People will work in silos if they don't understand that is the coordination, is everybody's coordinated effort that results in the outcome. And that until that outcome is achieved, we have all not finished the job or the work, And I think leadership's sincerity of intention clarity of purpose. For me, those things are very, very key. Why are you doing what you're doing? What is your big why? And do the people in your organization understand your big why? Then it comes to, what are you doing? Where are you doing it? So in what context? What are the goals? In what context are those goals? And then the how shows up. As we all know from The Alchemist, the universe conspires when you yourself are ready. And I think it's, again, taking all those elements and building congruence and alignment, because you will not get any results or the kind of results or be able to 10x your results if you're unable to coordinate your activities in such a way that you become aligned to the ultimate goal, to the ultimate why. So I find my why in the company, and there is a why we're all together kind of thing. So it's also, again, about a lot of the things we've said about humanity, about us all being human, and having that need for recognition and self-fulfillment, and recognizing those needs in other people, that they don't just lie in you who has brought everybody together, but that helping people fulfill purpose and their own individual goals is so important. And that means that you have to have very good internal communication, very strong HR, very strong HR. And then outwardly facing is we have what we call a customer experience team, who throughout COVID, for example, we were calling all our customers, not to sell them anything, not to ask them to buy anything, but how are you? How are your children? Hope you're all keeping safe. And they loved it. You know, the regional sales managers were calling all their customers. The store sales teams were calling their customers. How are you feeling? How are you doing? Is everyone safe? And so it's really, for me, about an ecosystem that speaks to the humanity, the essence and core of humanity, and why we are here, and what impact we want to leave at the end of the day. So it's big, you know.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And so, Paul, pardon, you have work to do with Mrs. Ogunlesi as well.
It's bigger than one person,
yes,
is what I'm saying. It's bigger than one person.
And I think I like the fact of that issue about everyone finding their purpose and finding their purpose in the work, and they're aligned in that sense, and they have the sense of being. Paul, you have some sales work to do for Mrs. Ogunlesi in terms of calling all their customers and the regional people calling. Okay.
I'm happy to. What I do.
What Paul said about selling in the online space.
Yes.
I think for us, you know, I'm trying to get everybody's head in the space of us being omni-channel. Because we still have, I'm a touch and feel person, for example. I've only ever bought one dress online, and I probably will buy another dress online, you know, because I didn't like it. My children can buy 10 dresses online and return all 10. I just think it's a bloody waste of time. I might as well go into the store, see what it feels like, buy it and move on.
Yeah.
That's the way they're wired. So it's also, I think I like what Paul said about, you know, there's a certain way your brain is wired to be able to sell online. As opposed to be able to sell value online. I'm holding on to that because that's something I've learned from you this afternoon, as opposed to selling value where the product is physically in front of the person. Mm-hmm. You find that selling value is a bit easier, you know, one-on-one, as opposed to trying to sell it online. But like all things in life, I believe there's a secret code or there's a secret sauce, and that you just need to crack the code, and then you're well on your way. So absolutely. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Paul, go ahead.
I'll be happy to help anytime. I'll jump when you call. I can promise you that. I like lists, so I'm going to list mine out. I just have a few things. The first thing that I have in terms of what I've learned and in terms of leadership is first thing for me is really much. I already spoke about it before, cutting off the long tail and helping myself and my team to identify what is important, what are you selling, and why is it important? And don't give them 10 things to do. Simplify 80-20, the 80-20 principle. We will always get 80% of our impact from 20% of our effort. So people call it work smart and not hard in one way or the other. But that's the first thing that I would like to share. for you and your team. Second thing that I would like to share is learning how to properly segment your customer. And you can do that in different ways, looking at data, be data-led. Try as much as possible not to be emotional about your decisions, be data-led, look at demographics, look at personality of the customers, look at how well you can predict their behavior, and even the geographies of these customers are very important. Are they in Lagos? Are they up country? And use that data to begin to design proper ways to reach them in the right sort of manner. You know, if you're selling clothes or you're selling music, it's the same principle. Another thing for me is being able to measure the specific impact of your business. Do not be a one-size-fits-all leader, right? Understand that not everything is one-size-fits-all. So do your work, don't be lazy, study the specific impact, right? Is that impact 10%? Is it 20%? Is it 30%? And based on that work that you do in the back end, the background check that you do, you'll be able to come up with solutions in a much easier sort of way. And of course, I spoke earlier about scenario planning. Be as detailed as possible. Be pedantic about scenario planning. Think of as many scenarios as you can. COVID, a plane may crash, you know, the sky may fall down, and also think of good scenarios as well. But, you know, with your team, make sure that you are putting them in the mindset of being able to be dynamic, to be able to be dexterous in the way that they sort of do their business. And the last thing that I would like to say is, for goodness sake, do your best to retain the customers who you already have, who are loyal to you. And during COVID-19, it was very important that the customers who you have know that you care about them and that you are human in the way you deal with them. You cannot lose customers now, right? So the ones that you have, please try your best to keep. And you can keep them by, again, doing a background check and knowing who they are, what their pain points are, and how to solve those pain points. Apart from that, just be generally positive. Be methodical. Don't do things by accident, and you know, do your homework. Sales is not sales. When you sales with every job, it's not an accident. I don't admire sales guys who believe in luck. I mean, luck is not a word for me. I like homework. I like to see the research. I like to see the data, and that's what I've learned, and that's what I've tried to teach my team. That it's time for us to learn the new ways and learn it properly. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all very much. And I'm sure if we had the time, we could stay here all evening, but I'm going to let everyone go, because not only do we have the opportunity of being the closing session, it's really also the end of the LLF Digital. And at this point, I've been asked to also say a big thank you to everybody, the attendees who have spent their time over the last 4 days, the speakers, and for me, I've had the three of you, and thank you so much for making it an easy conversation to have, because you had all the juice and I was just sort of joining the dots in general. And I think for me, it's also, you know, going through the exhibition earlier on today, I was amazed and awed about the creativity that we have here. And I think I'm going to resonate what Nika said in terms of, against all odds, we can do it in Nigeria. And so how do we continue doing it? How do we build on and bridge those gaps that tell us that, oh, we can't do everything, nothing good can come out of Africa? Though that narrative needs to change. So Tokumbo, you have work to do for all of us as well in changing that narrative, because we're all here as examples of what can happen. And I believe that, as Mrs. O says, it can happen to anybody once you have that internal resilience, you know, 80% psychology, right? And 20% skill. So let's not focus on the skill. Let's build our psychology, our mental state, our ability to deliver, and our ability to, you know, sell the passion, because a lot of people said in the comments, I can feel the passion. And we're not even physically with one another, but you can feel that passion. So it's possible to communicate digitally. When you're engaged, you're engaged. You can't take that away. So I also want to say to the whole LLF digital team, and Femi, you know, I'm sure we want to say congratulations. You've done great. You've brought us all together. You've shown us that it is possible to have a fair in this type of manner. And also, you've taken us Nigerian talent out and also brought other talent into Nigeria. Congratulations, well done, and just a big thank you. And I said, we look forward to LLF 2021, digital, physical, hybrid, in space, wherever we're all here for that in general. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to say, have a good Sunday evening. It's been wonderful. It's been a nice conversation with my sister Tokumbo, my big sis, Mrs. O, right? And also Paul. Nice to meet you. So Paul, I think one of the things you also need to do is invite all of us to some of these listening sessions so we can come and give you feedback.
I'm not sure we're the right audience.
But don't worry, like Paul said, we will put on our hoodies and things and wear our trainers and go and join them and things like that. But we'll give him honest feedback in that sense. But ladies and gentlemen, it's been a great conversation. Thank you all very much. And LLF team, thank you very much. You've been awesome. Well done. We thank you. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Good night.
Bye. Thank you very much.